there, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight on Up North Live Unscripted at 6:30. I am Maya Engel, and gosh, what a beautiful, very warm day across northern Michigan. We're going to talk more about daylight savings in a few minutes and how we're going to be falling back an hour Sunday. Well, today it feels like we're falling back like 3 months. Feels like a nice summer day. Joe, in Traverse City, got up to 80 degrees today on October 29th. This is so bizarre.
Yeah, broke the old record of 75 today by 5 degrees there.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, but remember that, you're going to talk about this more, but the hour in the spring they took away from you?
Yep.
Yeah, you get it back this
Yay.
weekend. Extra hour of sleep.
Yes.
Coming up here. But it was very warm, and we're going to get one more warm day in coming up tomorrow, and then things will kind of change a little bit. We'll talk too about Halloween. I'll tell you the big story, I think, for Halloween, there will be some showers on, but it looks pretty windy, Maya. So, you know, depending on what your costume is, might
want to secure the candy, too.
That's what you get for sure. Yeah, you don't want that to blow away.
Yeah, no.
So we'll take a look at all of that, and I'll look at into the weekend, too, in a few minutes.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Let's start off with one of our top stories of the day. So the Michigan Association of School Nurses, they held a virtual roundtable discussion today to urge policymakers in schools to prioritize nurses in their budget. Now, this comes after Governor Whitmer recently signed a bill adding $125 million into the state education budget for student health and safety. So our Daniel Zivian spoke with local educators about this idea.
The Michigan Association of School Nurses says there are just 700 nurses for 1.5 million students in Michigan schools. It's not enough, especially for kids with chronic diseases like asthma and diabetes.
Having a trained health professional on site does mean quicker interventions, reducing the need for emergency services, and unnecessary and unwarranted, perhaps, hospital visits.
Roughly 20% of children are dealing with behavioral health issues, which also places students at higher risk for missing school. The school nurse is often the first point of contact for a student dealing with a behavioral health issue.
The MASN wants more school nurses hired with newly available funds, but some schools have to make tough choices. Bel Air Public Schools hasn't had a nurse for a decade and is using the funds to pay for a social worker.
Our numbers are small here. We have just over 200 students, 250 I think it is. And so we don't have the population to support a full-time social worker. So we're looking to partner with, in this case, we're partnering with ALBA. So one of the barriers we have is not just financing mental health and medical health. It's finding the people to fill the position and then wanting to be split between two districts.
Conversely, Petoskey is stable with 2 school nurses, even as nearby North Central Michigan College ramps up its nursing program to address shortages.
One of the benefits of working in a school district is you work in the same schedule as your children. You know, so you've got the summers off, you've got the same holidays and vacations that your children do. So you're not working nights and weekends. So there's a lot of benefit to that for working parents.
Daniel Zivian, Up North Live News.
And Daniel Zivian is joining us live now for more on his story. Hey, Danny, thanks for joining us on Unscripted.
Hi, Maya. Thank you for having me again.
So this is a really interesting topic because when I first heard about this, I kind of thought like, well, doesn't every school have a nurse? Because when you watch movies and TV shows about schools, there's always a school nurse. But then when I really took a minute to think about it, my school didn't have a school nurse in Alpena. I was asking Joe if his did not. All of our coworkers here, everyone says that no, they didn't have a school nurse. So maybe it's not as common as some people think.
Quite possibly. I wish I was part of this poll. I didn't hear about this.
Well, did you have a school nurse?
Well, the fact is, for various chronic reasons, already visiting the hospital a lot during childhood, I actually never really paid attention in high school whether mine did have a nurse. I have to assume mine did. I grew up in suburban Detroit. I can't imagine the school not having one down in those parts.
Right. So with this kind of push from the Michigan Association of School Nurses, they are asking school districts to prioritize this money they're getting from the state budget to get a nurse. So one school that you talked to, Petoskey, already has 2 nurses, whereas Bel Air, they're saying like, actually, we kind of want to prioritize a social worker instead of just a nurse, right?
Yeah, so the total amount, it's interesting. You know, one thing to keep in mind here, and I think I get the sense that the Association of School Nurses wants this to seem, very official, but they are a nonprofit, and they are requesting that schools prioritize a certain way from a very general budget that's been granted. This is the $125 million supplemental. Mark actually did a story about this earlier.
Yeah.
I think this was back in September. It was like $300 million cut, and this $125 million was restored for mental health and safety services. There was a whole bunch of controversy in the legislature and in other places about that. I was actually reading the official press release in my notes, which is to say on my phone, about when Governor Whitmer signed the bill this month, restoring the $125 million. It didn't cite any of the lawmakers who protested about it. The press release cited the State Board of Education, who also put their voice into the ring. So here's the Nurses Association saying, hey, we really think you should put it towards that. But Bel Air, even though they're going to get funding from this $125 million, isn't going to get that much funding in comparison to some larger school districts. That still exists in the same way that these size things it exist no matter what. So, when I talked to Superintendent Brown about it, it's just a matter of, all right, well, we have these differing priorities, and in Superintendent Brown and the district's view, coming out of COVID, we're almost 5 years on, if you can believe it, but social effects are long-standing. Coming out of the pandemic and lockdown, the thought was, well, what do we really need here? And I think it's telling that you could sort of go either way on that aspect of it. One of the sound bites that our colleague captured from the MASN, suggested that nurses in schools can be a point of call for behavioral issues. Well,
yep.
For a small district like Bel Air, guess what? A social worker can do that too. And as long as you can call 911, you can still get emergency services there. So that's not to say Bel Air wouldn't want a school nurse. Superintendent Brown, I asked her, if you could get one, would you want one? I was like, yeah, of course, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. But, there are choices to be made, and that's also a personnel. They have to share. They're going to get a social worker, but they have to share it with nearby Alba anyway. Anything you do is going to have a personnel aspect that's magnified up here in northern Michigan, as we've covered many times, looking into different types of personnel shortages, including just general nursing shortages.
Mm-hmm. Well, the interesting thing, if you're comparing, should we get a nurse or should we get a social worker? When you think about all the schools that don't have nurses, well, they have other employees who are trained, who know how to do CPR, know how to use an AED, and worst case scenario, they can call 911 and of course get additional help. But for the most part, it seems like if a student is sick at school, they'll go to the office, they'll call their mom or dad or whoever guardian, and then they'll just go home. Or if someone's having maybe like a mental health crisis at school, it might not be as easy to just like call home and say like, I'm having this situation, I need to go home. That's where it would be nice to have a social worker who can help that student work through that at school.
Without even me telling you in advance, you summed up something that Superintendent Brown said during the interview. So I asked her, okay, so you don't have a nurse now, what do you guys do? Mm-hmm. There's general emergency training. Obviously, there's 911. Also, if a kid, there's sort of the in-between thing where, turns out a kid's got a cold during the day. Yeah. All right, we call the parents and we see what happens. And things aren't, again, it would be a lot easier for them to have a nurse. Not everyone in Bel Air, not every parent in Bel Air will be available to come pick up the child immediately. But then again, because people have to work and whatnot. But then again, for Bel Air, they feel comfortable doing this to an extent if they have to, because Bel Air is a pretty small district, both in population and in area,
sure.
Compared to a lot of other districts. So yeah, I think part of the other reason they are okay with prioritizing the social worker is, there is a general sense that things can be taken care of. If they felt it was really immediate, maybe they'd have a different set of priorities in Bel Air.
Anything else, Danny, you want to mention about something you learned from covering the story today?
Gosh, let me think. Well, the facilities these days are pretty nice. I had the pleasure of filming at Petoskey Middle School. That is right there. Oh, actually, you know what? Better one. I was vamping for time there, frankly. Here's something better from the Petoskey superintendent that he said. One, Bel Air talks about the barriers holding them back from having more nurses. Mm-hmm. What Dr. Leslie at Petoskey told me was that it wasn't really a matter of this $125 million. They are interested in having more rooms in different buildings of the school district that a nurse can operate in than they have currently. And my understanding is that they only have a room in Sheridan Elementary and in the middle school, 2 nurses, and they go between different places. I don't know that they would want to hire more nurses. That would probably be a bit of a tall order, but at the very least they want more rooms. But the funding for that isn't going to come from that $125 million. It's actually going to come from a bond that was already passed. I want to say it was in August this year, maybe in May. So that is already kind of taken care of. But that is another aspect to Petoskey's comparatively stable situation.
Interesting. All right, Danny, well, thank you so much for joining us and for going a little more in depth on that story. And our question of the day is related to this. So we want to know if you think public schools in Michigan should be required to have a school nurse. You can scan that QR code on your screen right now to vote, and we will take a look at the results in just a few minutes. But I mentioned daylight savings a little earlier. So this Sunday at 2 a.m., the clocks will fall back an hour. And as we get ready to fall back, doctors at Corewell Health, they're sharing some tips on how to adjust to the change. It's only an hour, but it actually can have an impact on your body. So doctors say the fall time change has the least impact on us compared to spring, but it still can affect us by causing delayed reaction times and making it hard to focus. So here's what a sleep medicine doctor is saying about it.
One of the notable impacts is to our circadian rhythm, which does rely on the sunlight to kind of tell us what time of day it is and whether we should be sleepy or alert. And if you change that abruptly by an hour, it's kind of like traveling to a different time zone. It's not awful, but we feel it. It's different. Staying up to that normal 11 o'clock bedtime feels a lot harder because yesterday it was midnight.
And Dr. Golding says adjusting to standard time, it takes about a week. So nothing too crazy. And again, it'll be nice to get that extra hour of sleep back. Okay, I thought we were running out of time, but we do have a little extra time. So let's go back to our question of the day if we can. And we have some results. So should public schools in Michigan be required to have a school nurse? 72% say yes, whereas 28% say no. Looking at some of we have a couple of live comments on our stream today. And John says, I love the social worker over nurse, have a nurse or clinic on call for medical, have a social worker there to work with kids and prevention of depression, acceptance, growing pains, etc. And then on our Facebook post, we have 129 comments about this. So it sounds like the biggest concern people have. So Christy says yes, but there needs to be funding for it. So that's where the Michigan Nurses Association of High School Nurses, they are pushing for school districts to use some of the funding they're getting from that supplemental $125 million in the state budget. They're pushing for districts to use that money to fund nurses. But as we heard from Daniel and the different school districts he talked to, a lot of schools have other priorities or they have other things that they need to use that money for, and some aren't getting enough money to even be able to pay for a full-time nurse. Looking at some of our other comments on our Facebook page, Danielle says yes, and they should have librarians and libraries too. That's interesting. I thought that schools still do have librarians, but I could be wrong about that. Allison says, yes, I would feel so much better for my son's teachers if they had a school nurse. So much already falls onto them. That's another very good point. If there's not someone who can focus on the health of students, just so much more falls onto the teacher or the principal or whatnot. Janice says, I thought all schools had a nurse on hand. Guess schools are worse than I thought. And Janice, that's kind of what I said earlier too. I also thought that most schools do have nurses on hand, but as we're learning today, sounds like most of them probably don't. So we can take a look at our question of the day and the results more a little later, but let's take a quick break. And in just a couple minutes, Joe Charlevoix will have much more on your forecast. We'll find out how long this warm stretch is going to stick around and what your Halloween forecast is going to look like. Stay with us.
I'm Jada Johnson from Big Boys TV, and the Fish and Game Report is sponsored by Johnson's Propane.
I don't know about you, but I certainly didn't have 80 degrees at the end of October on my bingo card for the year. Pretty strange. We've seen some warm October days, but 80 seems a little excessive. So Joe, tomorrow, I'm assuming things will cool down a little bit?
I mean, maybe a couple degrees.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I got up today, sat on the porch, had some coffee, and it was like,
short sleeve shirt.
Didn't want to come into work.
Yeah.
You know, it was one of those kind of days today. One more though, Maya, and then we'll kind of get back down closer to normal. It was windy too, and it was a warm wind. This is over the Lake City area. Look at the streamers on the lake there. This is in downtown. So there's the Veterans Memorial Park. You can see the flags there on kind of a windy day, but it was a warm wind. Dan, our drone operator, up over, well, Lake City earlier today. I'll go back to the streamers there on the water. You can just tell, you know, we had that brisk south-southwest wind. That's what it looked like there earlier today. Here's a look right now. We'll go to Whitefish Point, Mackinac City. There's the bridge, Gaylord and Cadillac, as we close in now on Sunset. Pretty nice for all spots. Now, last night we did have some rain while we were sleeping. In fact, I got in the car after the late news, some lightning in the sky. And then much of northern Michigan did get some of that rain. That was last night. This morning, it was nice to get some last night. A few spots, almost a ½ inch of rain. That was on the nose of a warm front, which has pretty much passed through. There's our surface map. That red line is a warm front just getting into the Sault Ste. Marie area. South of that, on the bottom below that red line, is where the warm air is now with the south wind, and you can see that on the temperatures tonight. You know, Madison, Wisconsin, still 80. It's 81 at Chicago. Even Green Bay is at 80, and Traverse City, while it's 75 now, did reach 80 degrees a little earlier today, and these were record highs. Take a look. Alpena tied theirs at 73, but these were all set in 1989 except for Houghton Lakes, and they were broken today. Traverse City broke theirs by 5. Gaylord also broke the record by 5 degrees. And interestingly enough, what a coincidence, 100 years ago today, it was 72 at Houghton Lake in 1924. It's now 2024. 100 years later, on this day, we broke the record. Kind of an interesting fact. Yeah. It is going to be windy the next few days. We'll kind of run through that. There's the wind tonight, strongest near Lake Michigan. Windy tomorrow. Little break up north for Halloween. And then there's around Trick or Treat right there. Yeah, keep the costumes close by. Might be holding on to them. A little windy coming up. We also have some rain in the forecast. Nothing tonight or tomorrow, but tomorrow night right there into Halloween. Little rain up in the western UP. That purple, that's snow. Although we won't see that here. And here's kind of a rough estimate on rain coming in, maybe up to a ½ inch for a few spots. And there's a look ahead. We've got Halloween. We turn the clocks back. We have Election Day coming up here. The coolest day this week will be Friday. We drop back down into the 40s. And yeah, a reminder, we do turn, as Maya mentioned earlier, daylight saving time, the clock back this weekend.
Going back to what you said about Halloween, it will be nice to have that win for all those superheroes with capes.
Well, yeah.
You know, that'll look
just
cool.
Fly right away.
There you go. All right, thank you so much, Joe. We're going to take another quick break, but we'll have some sports content for you coming up next. We have a pretty cool sports story to share with you tonight. Sault Ste. Marie Junior Gabe Litzner just made history, winning his third straight Upper Peninsula Cross Country State Final. In the process, he set an all-time UP Finals record. Sports Director Harrison Beebe caught up with Gabe.
Three-time state champion and an Upper Peninsula Finals record holder. Has that settled in yet that your 15-14 5K is the fastest time in the history of UP Cross Country State Finals?
I'm really proud of it. It's kind of starting to settle in. I'm just very happy with being the best that's ever run in the UP, and it feels great. But now I'm kind of moving on and getting to the next thing, and I want to drop that time down again soon.
Gabe, you have the chance to join some rarefied air next year, assuming you win that fourth state title. Only two other guys, and they're both in our viewing area, have ever won the state championship 4 times individually. That'd be Hunter Jones at Benzie Central a few years ago, and Austin Plotkin at Brimley, which is a UP guy just like yourself. So to know that you'd be in a group of just 3 people in the history of Upper and Lower Peninsula high school cross country, how's that make you feel if you get the job done next year?
It's a really special feeling to be up there with like some guys, because obviously Hunter Jones went on to do great things after high school, and it just feels great to win all 4 if I can get that done.
As a team, you guys have finished runner-up to Marquette for a couple years in a row now. So I know your teammate's probably chomping at the bit to probably help you win a team title as well. What are those talk likes to get you guys in the mix for a team state championship next year?
Obviously Marquette, they were a lot better than us, and they're graduating a lot of guys, and I kind of tell them, like, we have a chance of graduating a lot of their best guys. And it's kind of just, you got to put in the work if we want to win as a team. And I'd like to win my senior year as a team, and we all need to just get together, and we need to run over the summer, and we really need to train hard.
It's amazing that Gabe's accomplished all this, and he's only a junior. Hopefully he'll have another successful senior year. All right, that'll do it for sports, but stay with us. We'll take a look at our question of the day and the live results right after this break.
Salon services are furnished by Epiphany Advanced Academy in East Acme.
Our question of the day today is, should public schools in Michigan be required to have school nurses? 72% voted yes, 28% voted no. There's an interesting comment on our Facebook post that I want to read. It's from Kimberly. She says, yes, when we lived in another state, they had actual nurses at the schools. My son has type 1 and is insulin dependent. His care was much better then than when we moved here. Now she has to come in and give him insulin because the office lady was not a nurse. So interesting perspective there from Kimberly. But that'll do it for Unscripted tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you at 11.